Chart of the week. Clues from the smallest central banks of the world. Rate hikes on the frontier of the global economy. So this is one of my favorite charts here, and one that helped us get on to the right side of the global policy pivot that has rippled across markets this year. This chart tracks interest rate moves by the smaller and developing countries' central banks. I like to keep tabs on this group as they tend to be more sensitive to the ebb and flow of global growth and inflation tides. They also tend to fall under the radar, so it's one of those undercovered and underappreciated sources of information. Well, some might argue that central banks are powerless to stop what appears to be simply supply driven inflation sweeping across the globe right now. The thing is, we can't really talk about price without talking about supply and demand. And therefore, we can't say that the big wave of easing in 2020 wasn't at least partly to blame for surging inflation now. Either way, a clear reality is the global policy pivot from panic rate cuts in 2020. You can see there on this chart, this big spike in the green. There's basically the greatest number of rate hikes on record in that space of time. And near panic rate hikes in 2022, you can see there that the red line there counting the number of rate hikes is also at a record high there. So, and that's all efforts to get inflation back under control. So this pivot, you can see this clear pivot from rate cuts to rate hikes, along with acute cost pressures, general tightening of financial conditions, so mortgage rates going up, for instance, geopolitical shocks, raises the odds of a near-term global recession. And actually, I've got about 17 charts that point in that direction. But with all this talk of inflation and recession risk, it's important to also remember that these things go in cycles. And you can kind of clearly see these cycles playing out on this chart here. In that respect, we'll continue to watch this particular chart very closely for any signs of a turn in the other direction. So, the thing to watch in the future will be when that green line turns up. Because if we do get a recession and taming of inflation, that will ultimately mean an eventual pivot back to easing and better times ahead for markets. And that's going to show up clearly on this chart. So definitely one to watch. And if you like this chart, definitely come and check out what we're doing at the Top Down Charts Substack.